Hey, it's your boy, Mike the Situation, Sorrentino. Welcome to Statute of Limitations. It's the ultimate lineup. It's crooks.
This is not my fault that I stole this car.
It's con men.
This is my chance. I can be rich for life.
It's wannabe kingpins.
We all made together $500,000.
And queen pins.
It was basically a lounge of criminals.
These are stories of the nonviolent lucky punks and Robin Hoods that dodge the law.
I could have gone to prison, not jail, prison.
Because here's the situation, baby. It's only a matter of time before the statute of limitations is up. And technically, you might walk away scot-free. But don't take it from me, guys. I'm obviously no lawyer. This is Statute of Limitations. What's up? I'm Mike the Situation Sorrentino. On this episode of Statute of Limitations, the story of a man, his mother-in-law, the desert, and a shovel. Dig this, guys. We all know to get out of the hole, you gotta put down the shovel, and apparently, he forgot. Right now, it's a young lady with a scam for the ages. She swiped more credit card accounts than you can count, and we have people for that. We do. And in Illinois, where her story takes place, fraud can put you in prison for years. Talk about an uncomfortable situation, and I would know. Here's a story of how she managed to avoid paying the ultimate price. Meet Kim.
Hi, I'm Kimberly, and I committed credit card fraud with my brother, and we got away with it. Okay, so the year was 1987. I was at the University of Illinois. Now, you have to be in the mindset that this is before the days of computers. So that meant it was very, very easy to get away with wrongdoings. I was the quintessential good girl. We're talking church 2 to 3 times a week, class president. I used to find strays and find homes for them. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't curse, didn't have sex as a virgin. And so I was 1,000% a good girl. My brother, quite opposite. 1,000% the opposite. So my brother starts working at a high-end boutique inside of an airport. And because it's on the international terminal, there are a lot of wealthy people that go in and out of that particular area of the airport. My brother, being who he is, even since childhood, has always had a scheme or a scam for us to be able to make money. So he has this idea of, what if we sell credit card numbers? Now, you need to know this was the 80s. So there was a credit card imprinter, and you would take the credit card and you would lay it down under a series of carbons. And so sometimes the client would take the carbons back, and sometimes they would ask you to just throw them away. Well, the thing is, when you keep the carbons, it's a complete imprint of your credit card information. Back then, it was so common to say to someone, if you were in a store, you would say to the person, "Do you want your carbons?" And that was to avoid credit card fraud. And so what he would do is he would do a little psychological game where he would go, "You don't want these dirty carbons," because it would leave this black ink all over your fingers. Then he would get the person out of the store, and then he would have a stack of carbons by the end of the day. So here's where I come in. My brother needed clients. We had the plan, we needed the clientele. And so what better than a college campus and people that need to travel during winter break, spring break, summer break, et cetera, et cetera. So I let it be known to just a couple of people that I could get them really cheap plane tickets. And so then a handful of people came to me and they were like, "Hey, I want to go to Miami for spring break. Hey, I want to go to Colorado." And so then I would say, "Okay, how many tickets do you need?" And then I would let him know, "All right, we got a client. What would we charge for this?" And he's like, "Okay, 3 tickets to Miami during spring break. That's going to be $75 per ticket." So then I would get the $75. They would get the credit card number. And then sometimes, depending upon the person, I would then also make the reservations for them. The best part of this situation is, because it was the time before computers, is that whenever I would call or whenever I would give the numbers, I really had low fear, because it was very, very difficult to track what we were doing. I would do different accents, and I would pretend to be different people. So if I called and acted like I was from the heart of Georgia, then for whatever reason, the agent on the other side would just say, "Ma'am, let me check that one more time for you." And they were just so accommodating. I'm British. You can speak slower, and they will take their time with you because they feel as though if you have a British accent and you are booking a flight to Switzerland, you must be important. Yeah. I recall my very first client. My neighbors across the hall, I would get the money. They would get the credit card numbers. I was scared. I was absolutely, positively terrified. And I did it. After the first sale, it was kind of like a rebirth of the Kim. I was officially a bad girl. And I absolutely, positively liked it, but it really wasn't who I was, but it was one of those, like, who I could be. And so I was still involved in student government. I was helping out at the local shelter. And then I had this illegal side business of credit card fraud. But I think I kind of had this thought of, as long as I'm putting a lot of good out into the world, it balances the fact that I pretty much have a crime ring. Back then, we did not have social media. So everything was about word of mouth. And before you knew it, word of mouth, let's just say I started trending. People were knocking on the door, and then it was like, who's this random man and who's this random woman? And then it was like, oh, so-and-so from such and such fraternity said that you got them tickets to Aspen and such and so on. And I was like, who? And so then it was the, do I trust you? And then I was terrified that somebody was going to snitch on me and take down the whole business. So then it became where I would make people wait. So you would have to wait, and then you would kind of have to like meet me in the quad at a certain hour. So I was so afraid that they like had a wire on them and there was a whole sting, you know, because I came from a theatrical background. So I was like, there's something deeper going on. And I was like, I'm literally in the middle of a detective story right now. I was like, so who sent you? You know? And so I would trace back like, hey, so-and-so, do you know such and such? Did you tell them about me? And they're like, oh, yeah, he's cool. It got so huge that I had to enlist my friend. And so now I'm making enough where I can bring her in, but now she's also got word of mouth going on, and it's just growing, and it's growing. I was bringing in anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 a month. Now, mind you, in 1987, that's a lot of money. Shoot, that's a lot of money now, really, if you think about it. But I was doing very, very well. I'm growing faster than what my paranoia can process. I'm terrified and happiest I've ever been in my entire life because my social stature has changed. So I'm at the biggest parties, everybody knows me, I've got money in the bank, I'm shopping, and I am living the Hollywood life in the cornfields of Illinois. And so it's senior year, and we have come to an end, and so now it is spring break. And so the four of us now take a trip, or are planning a trip, to the Bahamas. So we're sitting at the airport, we're all packed up, we're ready to go, sunscreen in hand, baby, let's roll. And then all of a sudden we look up, and here's where my life of crime ends.
Kim's credit card travel scheme may have started off okay, like most schemes, but things are about to go south, way south, when she realizes that all of these flight charges could get her charged with a couple decades in the clink. No bueno. The story takes a whole new direction on Statute of Limitations next. We're back with more Statute of Limitations. We last left Kim as she continued her career of crime using stolen credit cards to cash in. Now, her number actually might be up. Because even if you use someone else's card, you still end up paying for it yourself. Because in Jersey, karma is not just a club. Just watch.
And so it's senior year, and we have come to an end, and so now it is spring break. And so the four of us now are planning a trip to the Bahamas. So we get to the airport, and because of me being the queen that I am these days, I decide to splurge and pay for the private Admirals Club beforehand so that we can wait inside the private lounge. So we're waiting in the lounge, and it's pretty empty because it's kind of early in the day. And we notice that there's like basically only one other guy in there in the corner that's kind of sitting behind us. And all of a sudden we look up, and a ton of cops are now standing in the lounge. And they have their hands on their holsters like they're ready to draw. So I look at my friend, she looks at me, and we're like, the jig is up. The police are coming full speed, and they say, freeze. And we, of course, every muscle tenses up, we're bawling, and then they walk right past us, and they arrest the guy behind us. Oh my God. I can still feel like the fear in my chest. So I decided after that, we're done. Clean break. The business is over. We are packing up shop. My social status has now completely changed. I am now part of the gossip. I'm no longer invited to the parties because I'm no longer offering the service. And it was really kind of depressing and terrifying because I kind of lost myself for a little bit. And then I had to, for when I say decades, I mean 30 years, 25, 30 years of always worried about my karmatic debt of have I paid back enough to society for what I did, what was wrong? And has it happened? Yes. I have had my credit cards hacked, I do believe 4 times now. 4 times. And it's a horrible feeling. And I know I'll never know who those people were that I was able to sell their numbers for college student travel. But this is my formal apology. I'm sorry. I'm definitely sorry. And you better believe I have paid for it.
Let that be a lesson. Kim may have thought that she got away after she quit her life of crime. Her life definitely declined because there's no statute of limitations when it comes to karma. So if you're ever thinking about stealing credit cards, you better check yourself because you're gonna have a situation. Right now, it's time to hear from a guy who absolutely hates his mother-in-law. Big surprise. What is the surprise is that he decided to commit the mother of all crimes to get back at her by stealing everything that she owns. And that right there is definitely a plan. This son of a bitch actually pulled it off without a hitch. I shit you not. Meet Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt, and I robbed my mother-in-law. It was 2002. I was living in Nevada. At the time, I was working for a trucking company, just trying to make ends meet. I got married very young. I had a child even younger. It wasn't any secret that my mother-in-law thought that I wasn't good enough for her daughter. She was like an ultimate Karen, like a litigious Karen. She respected no boundaries. Always was at my residence, in my house, demeaning me. There's an invasive species that can take over a habitat and ruin an ecosystem. That's basically my mother-in-law. I remember at one point we had a repairman come to the house, and to her that was just evidence of me not being like a man's man. So she was taking a dig like that. And then I remember the conversation turned to my son. They were doing like a time capsule project. She had started talking about like all these heirlooms that she had purchased. So another thing you need to know about my mother-in-law is that she has an obsession with fine art. And one thing in particular, she was talking about this original painting that she had her hands on. In that moment, it was like a light bulb went off. I just remember sitting there at the table and just thinking, I'm stealing this painting. I guess I was aware enough to know that if I was gonna do this, that I was gonna have to have things lined up beforehand. And I also realized, like, I don't really know anything about art. How am I gonna, like, sell a piece of stolen artwork? It wasn't really about money or artwork to begin with. It was just more about spiting my mother-in-law. Probably a lot of guys out there that can relate to that. So that's kind of when I came up with the idea of just burying it like a time capsule. And so here I am out in the desert at this discreet location that I picked. I'm digging a hole with a pickaxe and a shovel. And I can't help but think, the last time someone was out here burying something, it was probably a body. So I did that ahead of time, but I still wasn't even actually sure if I was gonna follow through with it until I was presented with more of an opportunity. My wife's mother-daughter annual spa/wine tasting weekend together. Once that was kind of on the calendar, I knew it's like, this is it. This is the weekend I'm gonna do it. My only responsibilities for the weekend were to take care of my mother-in-law's dog and to drop my son off at a soccer game. I packed our minivan with the Pelican box and a cooler full of refreshments. We drove him to his game, walked him out on the sideline, made sure there were lots of parents that saw me there. I said hello, made my appearances. So I snuck off to the car, drove straight to my mother-in-law's house, and just started grabbing stuff. I mean, I took everything, all the prints off the walls, the expensive ones, the reproductions, the fine china. So I remember I get everything loaded into the car and adrenaline's just going crazy. And I'm about to get out of there. And I had the epiphany, like, this is gonna look too clean. Like, you just let yourself in. Like, who are they gonna come ask questions to? The guy that has been watching the dog and that has a garage door opener and a key to the house. I'm freaking out because I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. I'm second guessing myself. So I was like, you gotta make this look like somebody else did it. So at that point I was like, I gotta smash a window. I went out into the backyard without trying to be seen and I picked up a rock out of her garden and I threw it. It just clanked the side of the house. So I picked the rock up again. I chucked it and it smashed the window in. You can't just smash a window with a rock. They're not gonna assume that that's how they got in then. You gotta go up and then like push the window up like they let themselves in. So I ran back up and I kind of pushed the window next to the broken one up to make it look like they reached through the hole that the rock had made and pushed the window up. At that point, I don't know, did the neighbors hear the broken window? Has anyone seen me? Like, you've wasted entirely too much time. You gotta go. So like, I was all ready to leave and then I'm just panicking. At that point, I feel like I'm just running circles around the house. The window's broke, let's haul ass out of here. I gotta get in the car. I gotta get out of here immediately. I just remember like trying to calmly exit the garage, calmly drive out of the neighborhood. But then I got to a highway and I just started burning because I realized there was only so long that I could be gone before people started asking questions. I got to the location as quick as I could in the minivan and I just took that Pelican box out of the back and I just threw it in the hole. And I started covering it with dirt. I'm just pushing everything in. I was digging as furiously, as frantically as I could. I mean, it was broad daylight. And then I just hear a helicopter circling around above me. And I look up and it's just flying over. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, I've already been caught.
It's kind of like a scene out of Goodfellas. It's got the choppers and the coppers. But he went to the desert to bury his mother-in-law's art, not his mother-in-law. So how did Matt clean out his mother-in-law's house and make a clean getaway? We've got all the dirty details next on Statute of Limitations. We're back with more Statute of Limitations, where our boy Matt was so fed up with his mother-in-law, he decided to rob her blind. Unfortunately for him, the cops aren't blind because now they're onto him. I know, right? Anyway, so how did Matt manage to escape the long arm of the law? He'll tell you right now. Check this out.
I just hear a helicopter circling around above me. And I look up and it's just flying over. And I'm like, I'm done. I've already been caught. I was digging as furiously, as frantically as I could. I mean, it was broad daylight. At this point, I'm just trying to get it done and get out of there. I just remember trying to calm myself and steady myself. I was literally like hands shaking as I drove. And I was just trying to like find a way to get my heart rate down and to calm myself so that I wasn't gonna look all sweaty and dirty and weird when I got back to my son's game. So, I was basically trying to show up like I was a soccer mom with refreshments. I got orange wedges and RC Cola, everybody. But, I had just committed a robbery. So after we get home from the game, I'm just sitting around waiting until Sunday evening, until my mother-in-law and wife get home. I've got all the time in the world, basically, to go over in my head over and over again, what did I miss? What did I screw up? Was I seen? Who saw me? It's enough to literally make someone lose their mind. So I basically was just sitting around waiting for my mother-in-law to hysterically tell us how her house had got robbed. I have to react like this is all news to me, somehow I'm sympathetic to her situation. But in reality, in my head, I'm like, screw this lady. Obviously, when your house is robbed, police are gonna come around and ask lots of questions. They came over and asked me, where I was, and I was a nervous wreck on the inside, I'm like, here's the day they finally, they're finally gonna put it all together. They're asking me all these questions, when was the last time you went by the house? I told them Saturday morning, I put some food out, for the dog. They asked me some questions about whether or not I noticed any suspicious activity or if I had seen anything or what the state of the house was, I guess, when I was there, Told them it was normal, obviously, that I hadn't really noticed anything. And, I felt like there was no way I didn't feel or look guilty when they were asking me questions, but, to my surprise, they were mostly just asking me administrative stuff. Part of the slow dissipation of me, realizing I had probably gotten away was when my mother-in-law got her insurance check. She wasn't satisfied with it. It ate at her that she didn't have the artwork. There's some crimes you regret. This one isn't one for me. For me, it was never about the money. It was just about creating some chaos for my mother-in-law. It's no surprise I'm no longer with my wife. You can't rob your mother-in-law and then keep a healthy relationship. It was probably headed there anyway. To this day, I've still never dug any of it up to find out how valuable it is. One day, my son's gonna be able to dig that up like a time capsule and find out for himself. Would I ever do this again? Absolutely not. I will never get married again. And that's my story of buried treasure.
Thanks to the laws of the land, Matt got away from his crime free and clear, and got the one thing every man wants for his mother-in-law: payback. Except for me, I love my mother-in-law. Mom, I hope you're watching. Love you. That does it for this episode. But if you like those stories of regular folks committing crimes without ever doing the time, we've got a whole lot more lined up for you. I'm Mike the Situation Sorrentino. See you next time on Statute of Limitations. This program is for entertainment purposes only, and it is not legal advice. The statute of limitations are complicated and depend on many factors. If you need advice, you should seek legal counsel from a competent attorney in your jurisdiction.